Let's jump into the week 2 recap. I'm telling you right now, this one is not going to be as long as last week. Okay? I need to hold myself to that. I'm not doing an hour and a half to 2 hours every single week. So the goal is to be more efficient. Let's jump into the week 2 headline. There are two different areas where I think you could go. The first one is the failure at the top of the tight end position. That's something that's been pretty brutal. There were those 5 guys that were drafted in sort of 2 different tiers in the early portion of the draft, and 4 of them have failed. 4 of them, Mark Andrews, Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, and Dalton Kincaid, are averaging under 5 points per game. The 4 of them combined are averaging less than 15 points per game. You would have been hoping that you were getting nearly 15 per game from each of them individually, probably somewhere between 12 and 14. And the 4 of them combined are under 15 per game. They've been horrible. You hope that they get going, that they turn it around. But right now, those are some of the worst picks of the entire draft. That's one area where you could go for a headline. And I think, I got to go with 2, because the other really is how devastating some of these early season injuries have been. You look at the top 17 picks in the draft, and what is it, 5 of them that are already dealing with something serious? McCaffrey, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, Isaiah Pacheco. So it's 4 that are dealing with a significant injury. And then you have some others that have already been banged up. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson. Those guys should be fine, but they're already banged up. Tyreek Hill hasn't been injured himself, but now his quarterback is out, so that impacts him. It's not a good situation. You hate to see this. And if you want to look at the back of the second round, Rashad White has a groin injury. Joe Mixon has some sort of lower body, hip, or ankle. It's tough. Some other big-time guys out, too. Cooper Kupp is going to miss a significant portion of the season now. You hate to see that 2 weeks in. 2 weeks in, we're already looking at a third of the first 30 picks being impacted by injury. And so we've seen some really low scores in our league so far. The move to half PPR is part of it, but man, it's also because of these injuries and just offense in general in the NFL really struggling. Let's hope it gets going here in week 3. You're moving away from, like, with teams not using the preseason as much anymore. Now you get into week 3. Guys have reps now. Players that moved from one team to another, they're starting to adapt to their system a little bit. You hope that by week 3, week 4, things get going, because so far it's been pretty miserable. All right. Without further ado, it's time for the week 2 matchup breakdown. Not too many good ones this week, so I guess we'll start with the closest and probably overall best matchup of the week, and that's Peter defeating Colin by a score of, if this would load. You kidding me? We're going to take 30 seconds to load this? Okay. Peter, 110.99 to 108.48. Matchup MVP, I think you got to go with probably, there are 3 options, but I think you go with Justin Jefferson, because he put up his 21.3 points in limited snaps. He missed time in this contest, and he ends up with a 97-yard touchdown, which will probably end up as one of the most electric plays of the entire season. And obviously, when you win a matchup by 2 points, when you win in the second matchup by 4 points, a 97-yard touchdown is quite the swing. And it really for your season. So that's a huge play that Peter got from Jefferson before he went down. It already mentioned, looks like he's going to be all right. And early returns for Sam Darnold, for that Vikings offense, are pretty good. And they just had a nice performance against a quality defense in San Francisco. Jalen Hurts, good showing for fantasy. Still worried about him as a passer. He was held under 200 yards passing. He's got 3 interceptions already this season. That's a trend carrying over from last year. But you like to see the rushing that he's provided. 13 rushing attempts each of the first 2 weeks. Over 100 rushing yards already, and he did have that rushing touchdown in week 2. And the Eagles have shown that when they need to, they're still willing to go to that short yardage package. Even with Barkley, they are still willing to utilize Hurts on 4th and 1 short yardage situations around the goal line. So that's good to see for Hurts's fantasy value. Derrick Henry scored again. I kind of think this is what he's going to be. Decent yardage, depending on the week. And I think 75-ish yards per game rushing. You're hoping to get a touchdown out of him because you're not going to get pass catching. And I don't think you're going to see many crazy, like 125 to 150 yard performances. So you're hoping for him to find the end zone. So far, he's 2 for 2 on the season. DK Metcalf had a breakout game. 14 targets. And this is on a day where Jackson Smith-Njigba also had, I believe, 17 himself. So that's great. DK, you want him. In week 1, he saw 4. And so we'll see. Historically, he hasn't been a consistently targeted player. And that's what's held him back from being elite. But maybe he gets there. He's always had the talent. Maybe it all comes together. Mentioned in the open that Dalton Kincaid, it's been brutal. And this is a guy I was sky high on. It has not worked out. 6 targets through 2 weeks. Saw something on Twitter X. He has -4 air yards this season. What the hell? I mean, what are they doing? This is a talented downfield piece. Like, how are you not, with Josh Allen, how are you not getting him downfield looks a couple of times per game? Everything is just lateral with him. That's horrible. And now part of the issue on Thursday was he took a shot to the head, and I think he missed 1 or maybe 2 possessions, did re-enter. But by the time he re-entered, they already had been blowing Miami out. They basically didn't throw the ball in the second half. So perhaps he would have been on his way to a better performance in week 2. But that usage, that lateral usage is horrendous. Not much else that's remarkable here. I think Peter, the running back 2 spot is a real problem. Ezekiel Elliott, that's not going to get it done. That's a touchdown dependent, like totally touchdown dependent, low ceiling. If he doesn't score, he's going to give you nothing. That's evident through 2 weeks. And I think that was evident coming into the season. And yeah, Jalen Warren hasn't gotten going yet. Peter did spend up a little bit on those two running backs last week in Fab, 20 on Bucky Irving, 15 on Tank Bigsby. And if you're this team, you're hoping that one of those two guys works out long term. And I think there's a chance that happens. They might have standalone value. And of course, they're quality handcuff options as well. So yeah, you got to figure that running back two spot out. And Amari Cooper's been real bad too. Really bad. 2.6 each of the first 2 weeks. Good news is 17 targets through 2 weeks. Somehow he's got 27 yards on 17 targets. And that's one of the worst ratios I've ever seen. It almost feels impossible. But here we are. It's the case. You'd look at that usage and you look at a player of Cooper's ability and you think that better days are ahead, probably. But he's still dealing with Deshaun Watson. And so the inconsistency, I don't know that that's going to subside. But yeah, Peter gets away with a really, really huge 2-0 week. And there was a big play at the end of that Eagles game where Hurts had thrown a pass to Barkley. Barkley gets tackled at the 1 yard line. That gets overturned. Actually, as I'm doing the math in my head, in the moment, that was a huge play. It didn't end up being the difference because even if you took 2 points away, Peter still would have won this matchup by 0.51. So really what it comes down to is Hurts performed on Monday night when Peter needed it most. Got him 25 points when you needed at least 23. And it's why you draft these stud quarterbacks. You need them to you're looking for 20 to 25 every week with the ability for those huge games as well. On the losing side, Colin, this is tough because man, there was opportunity here for a 2-0 week. Two just major managerial blunders. One, Evan Ingram gets left in the lineup. And I'll start off by saying this was a rough one because this was an injury suffered in warmups. So this wasn't something where we're monitoring this throughout the week. This wasn't something where he was ruled inactive in an hour and a half before the game. This was he went out there and he tweaked his hamstring or whatever it was. I think it was hamstring. Yes. He tweaked that in warmups. And so at that point, you have limited time to be able to see that happened. And I'm sure Colin was busy doing something. And he just didn't get to it in time. But that is brutal because you look at it, you needed 2.5 points, 2.6 points. And there were options out there that could have gotten him that. And then this ends up being a 2-0 week instead of a 1-1. And also, what ends up being the worst drop of the week, Kirk Cousins made that decision right after 1 o'clock when he did get into the league and look at his team. That ends up costing him 11 points, dropping Kirk Cousins for Matt Stafford. So those two spots, the quarterback and tight end spots, end up costing him this matchup. Outside of that, there are some very encouraging signs. Breece Hall looks like the stud he was expected to be. Huge workload. What does he have? 21 touches each of the first two games. Brian Robinson has been really good. Brian Robinson is just a quality running back. The problem with him for fantasy is that he doesn't catch passes. He's not been in a high octane offense early in his career here. And so it limits your ceiling. You pretty much need a touchdown out of him. for him to have a good week. He ends up with 133 yards rushing. And it's just kind of a low end running back, like a high end running back two type performance with all those rushing yards because he didn't score and he only had one catch. Yeah, Brian Robinson, really quality real life player who's a little bit worse for fantasy, but hopefully if Washington can get going offensively, hopefully Robinson can develop into a nice piece. And if nothing else, he was a good pick in the 6th round. Malik Neighbors, big breakout game for him. 18 targets, and that was the hope, right? The Giants really have nothing else, at least not in that pass catching room. So why not feed him? You drafted him in the top 10 for a reason. You just hope that Daniel Jones can be good enough to get him the ball. He was this week. Rest of the team, not great. Well, hey, let's give Kaimi Fairbairn a shout out. 20 points. He's got 37 points through 2 weeks. Let's see some of the guys who that makes him easily the number 1 tight end. Let's keep going through these positions. He'd be the number 3 ranked wide receiver. The number 7 ranked running back. Makes you laugh. Like the 10th ranked quarterback, 12th. So he'd be a quarterback 1 and easily a running back, wide receiver, and tight end 1. 37 points out of Kaimi Fairbairn through 2 weeks. Michael Pittman, didn't like him coming into the year. This is bad. This is terrible. I said it, like this is where Richardson struggles. Where Pittman excels is where Richardson struggles. And that's tough. You hope that they can develop a connection. Pittman's a good player, we know that. Richardson's shown flashes of being a good player too. But it's just not there yet. The consistency isn't there, and so there are going to be some of these struggles. One of these weeks, it's going to work out. They'll connect in the end zone. But, yeah, I wouldn't be expecting him to return on that 3rd round investment. And Chris Olave, I mean, what the hell? Like, this team has scored 40-plus points the last 2 weeks, and he's got 13 points on the season. I don't know. Rashid Shaheed is Derek Carr's number 1 option right now. And then you have Alvin Kamara, of course, who pretty much did everything for them a few days back. But yeah, I'd be worried about Olave because he's just not shown it the last 2 years. Again, same thing as Pittman, good player, but there's just something missing between him and his quarterback. So yeah, Colin, you end up 1-1, but man, missed opportunity. Really feels like it should have been a 2-0 week. We'll stick with this division. Mecca defeats Larar 112 to 75.76. It's an interesting score. For Mecca, the matchup MVP is quite obviously Marvin Harrison Jr. What a performance. Everyone was panicked after week 1, freaking out after he caught 1 pass, and then immediately, like from the outset of that game, made it obvious that there's no reason that anyone should have been overreacting to that. He ends up with a pretty freakish line, 4 catches, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. He could have had a 3rd. There was another red zone target that I saw that hit off his hands. And the only reason that he didn't put up more numbers in this game is because they had 40 points, like late third, early fourth. They were destroying this team. I think they were up 21-0 maybe by the end of the first quarter. So they didn't really have to push it. We saw the talent of Harrison on display, and he's going to be good. I do have my concerns about him returning on 19th overall pick, that investment. I've said that from the beginning. Because he is still a rookie and there is still opportunity for him to be inconsistent. But man, this kind of ceiling that he just displayed. It's why he's one of the highest touted wide receiver draft prospects of all time. He showed it. Amon-Ra St. Brown, welcome back. 19 targets, 11 catches, just doing what he's always done. He did get banged up. It sounds like it's a non-issue. That's good. You want him on the field. One of the more enjoyable players to watch in the entire sport. Yeah, 19 targets. Love that. George Kittle, quality game. And hey, George Kittle is going to be counted on now. Deebo Samuel out. Of course, McCaffrey has been out. But yeah, Kittle, 8 targets. He got into the end zone. Brandon Ayuk is still getting up to speed. You might have another week or two here where Kittle is essentially their number one target in the passing game. So that's really promising. But the good stops there for Mecca's team. Cooper Kupp, that sucks, man, right? I mean, Nakua goes down, you had that 21 target game, and suddenly everybody's saying, wow, this could end up being like the steal of the draft. I was worried about that usage from an aging player with an injury history like his. I didn't think he'd get hurt the next week, but I figured that usage would be unsustainable for him. What a shame, because this was going to be a great pick, and now by all indications are that he's going to have to go on injured reserve, and God knows how long he's going to be gone. So that really is too bad. Because really, I mean, you look at it, that trio of receivers Mecca had you could have ended up with, best case scenario, 3 top 5 guys. Pretty easily 3 top 15 guys with ceiling for what I just said, if they all played to their absolute maximum capability. Anthony Richardson, inconsistency. And look, we got to remember this is essentially his rookie season. He barely played last year. He barely played in college. So there are going to be some of these weeks, especially when you're playing on the road against a quality defense like Green Bay. He's going to have some bad moments. And they have 2 more good defenses coming up. They play Chicago, they play Pittsburgh. There are going to be some rough moments. What you hope for fantasy is that the rushing is better than it was. He had 4 rushing attempts for 37 yards. And it's funny, now you start looking at it, through 2 weeks, he's got 10 rushing attempts. And that makes me think that he was told, you got to relax, because he got injured several times last year in the few games he played, missed almost the entire season. The organization probably told him, you got to stop. You got to pick your spots. And that's more so than the inconsistent passing. That's really worrying for fantasy, because the rushing is what was going to provide a floor. It's what was going to provide a floor and a ceiling. So I think Richardson's going to probably end up being a boom or bust guy, and he's still a guy I'd want to have, but it might not be as fun as it looked like it was going to be after week one. If you have him, you have to be willing to accept that there are going to be some of these weeks. But frankly, at the quarterback position, pretty much no one's been immune to games like this thus far. The other issue for Mecca right now is those two running back spots. Of course, he went zero running back in the draft. So far, he hasn't hit on any of them. Gus Edwards is losing out to J.K. Dobbins. Jerome Ford stunningly lost out to Deonta Foreman last week. Chase Brown is a non-factor. Jalen Wright is a non-factor. And then you have Blake Corum on the bench, Raheem Mostert injured. None of these guys have worked out. This is the issue with zero running back. Like, in theory, you look at it and you say, man, if I could just hit on one or two of these running backs, I'm going to be so loaded everywhere else. My team's going to be a juggernaut. But it's not that easy to hit on. It's not that easy to hit on these running backs. And so far, Mecca's finding some difficulty there. And now without Cup, it's gonna be tough. He needs one of these guys to step up. He really does. One of them needs to become a viable weekly option. And it really is as simple as that. But the team is overall in a decent spot, and 3-1 on the season is obviously a good place to be. For Larar, this was a terrible, terrible week. He, like Colin, started an injured player, a little bit less excusable. This one, considering Keenan Allen played Sunday night, and it was an injury that was being monitored throughout the week. So you can't do that. You can't have someone like that in your lineup. And there needed to be a plan. Like I'm looking at it now. By the time that game came around, he could have dropped Dallas Goedert, so never mind. You could have dropped Goedert. You could have picked someone up. You just can't have an injured player in your lineup. But Larar really has gotten screwed. Christian McCaffrey, God knows how long he's going to be out. Minimum a month, obviously. Potential for more. Keenan Allen injured. Joe Mixon left that game early. I think part of it is, Krieger and I said during the draft recap, this was an old team. You draft a bunch of old guys, there's increased chance of them getting injured. We're seeing that. And there's increased chance of them busting, like tight end 28 Travis Kelce, who has 6 points on the season right now. I really wanted nothing to do with Kelce this year in fantasy. Do I think he's still going to have some good games? Yeah, I do. I think he'll have moments. But Travis Kelce's days of being a consistent contributor are done. It's not really the way the Chiefs offense works anymore. And he's gotten old. Now, Pacheco being out should benefit all of the pass catching options because they'll probably throw more. But Kelce quite clearly he's taken a backseat to Rashee Rice and potentially Xavier Worthy as the season goes on as well. We'll see. But yeah, it's been pretty miserable for Kelce. You're hoping that he can at least start getting some red zone involvement and I don't know, providing a floor. Like, he might not be that guy who goes out and can give you 25 points anymore, but geez, you're wanting him to get you 10. Give me even 4 catches for 50 yards. That's 7 in half PPR. Give me that at least. But yeah, that's been rough. The lone bright spot, also, Stephon Diggs came crashing back down to earth. I'm out on him completely. I think he's nothing. I thought nothing of those 2 touchdowns he caught in week 1. He's got 7 catches for 70 yards on the seat. Not even. 10 catches for 70 yards. 7 yards a catch. That's what he is. He's their underneath guy. He's their possession receiver on 3rd and short. They have 2 way more explosive guys in Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Diggs is their number 3 at this stage of his career. The lone bright spot is J.K. Dobbins. What a pick. I mean, Larar gets him 10th round. He's the running back 4 right now. He's averaging nearly 10 yards per carry. He looks the best he ever has. He's got over 130 yards rushing in each of the first 2 weeks. I just hope he can stay healthy. He's always been good. He just never has stayed on the field. And now he's got a good line, a good scheme, a team that is happy to just keep pounding the rock. Keep feeding him. Keep feeding him, and let's keep him healthy. And this could be one of the great picks of the draft. This is the type of pick that could help make up for the McCaffrey injury. The problem is you have these other guys banged up too. I forgot T. Higgins is also out. So if you're Larar, you're without McCaffrey, Higgins, Allen, Mixon got hurt. It's fucking ridiculous. Nobody would be able to survive this. The good news for him, he's 2-2. You try to keep it afloat, and maybe by mid-season, you're full strength and you have a chance. Season definitely. I mean, this team is definitely still in play for contention, but need to at least hover around 500 before McCaffrey comes back. Can't dig too much of a hole. Let's move to my division now, and we'll start with Andrew, who defeated Sam 130.81 to 106.1. I mean, one of the higher scoring matchups of the week, right? What was this? Was probably the second highest combined scoring matchup of the week behind Nothdurft Lorran. It's the state of scoring right now. Andrew, second highest scoring team. Matchup MVP James Cook. Cook was sensational in week 2. 3 total touchdowns. You know, it's funny. I had some good takes on this recap last week. Probably my worst take was my rant about how James Cook can't score touchdowns. And then 48 hours later, he scored 3, I believe all 3 in the first half too. And it really is wild when you look at it, because this was a player who he came in with 9 touchdowns in 34 career regular season games. And then he ends up with 3 in the first half. So he scored a quarter of his career regular season touchdowns in the first half of Thursday's game. I still choose to believe that that's not necessarily prescriptive of the future, but maybe I'm going to be wrong, right? Clearly, Buffalo wants to run the ball. Short passing. Josh Allen is playing way smarter so far. He doesn't have an interception through 2 weeks. He's got a 74% completion percentage. This is not the Josh Allen of old. He's taking what the defense is giving him. 42 passing attempts. That's it through 2 weeks. So you're seeing an efficient Allen. You're seeing the ground game be utilized more. And that is what started to happen once Joe Brady took over last year. But It's even more exaggerated now. Yeah, great game for Cook, and Andrew he bought all in on Cook this year. And this is a player who he has in multiple of his fantasy leagues that he's in. If Cook works out, he's gonna have a good season. On the flip side, Josh Allen, as a result, didn't produce. And this is something that I remember I said this, like when you have the two of them, they kind of hurt each other. Like it's very hard for both of them to have a great game in the same week. And this was even with you had the ultimate, if you're an Allen Cook owner, which was a receiving touchdown by Cook. That's not going to happen all that much. Maybe that happens 4 or 5 times this year. So you got one of those, and it still didn't amount to a huge combined week. You still end up with less than 40 combined points from these two guys. Game script screwed them. And Miami, if they could have kept up scoring wise, you end up with a bigger night from these guys. But they put up 31 points. You end up getting 40 from them combined. I don't know. To me, that's not anything special. I just think it's hard for them to both be great in the same week. And that's a concern I have just for this roster build in general. CeeDee Lamb, let's move on. CeeDee Lamb and Devontae Smith were both really good. Hey, Devontae Smith, this is his opportunity right now. AJ Brown he was out in week 2. He's going to miss week 3. Probably going to miss week 4 because they have a week 5 bye. It makes a ton of sense for them to sit him 2 more weeks. So you're probably going to get 2 weeks of Smith as the wide receiver 1, and you just hope he takes advantage of it. He did in week 2. CeeDee Lamb, yeah, he had that explosive touchdown play. Only 7 targets in a game where they were trailing all day long you would certainly love to see more. Obviously, he's going to be great this year. I mean, barring injury, he will be great. He's just too talented. They throw it too much. Really, nothing else to say there. Calvin Ridley, another guy Andrew bought in on. Big game for him. He ends up with 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, and the other one was, I believe it was a deep passing play. Only 13 targets through 2 weeks. Feels a little disappointing, but Will Levis is going to take shots to Calvin Ridley, and you just hope they hit on them like they did this past week. Good flex. I mean, it's certainly a good flex option. Andrew, I said after the draft, I like Andrew's team. Now he needs Mark Andrews to step up. That's for sure. Already talked about him. It's been bad through 2 weeks. And then the running back 2 spot is iffy, right? Zach Moss, it's been fine. Running back 28 on the season. It's kind of what you feel like he is. Like he's fine. Serviceable. They do have a good run of matchups upcoming. I know that because I've got Cincinnati players myself. They've got Washington and Carolina the next 2 weeks. So, hey, Zach Moss, if you're going to do something, these next 2 weeks are probably when it's going to come. But yeah, you feel iffy about that running back 2 spot. I think if you're Andrew, that really is the weakness on his team at this point. Let's shift to Sam now. Just not a good week. Couple of 3 huge performances, right? 3 guys 20 plus, and then nobody else over 6.5. So it was an all or nothing week. Kyler Murray was great. Kyler Murray really was as good as it gets. 17 of 21, 266, 3 touchdowns. He had 59 rushing yards, so that's 57 and now 59. That rushing floor is awesome. Hey, sign me up for 50 rushing yards a week from Murray. That's great. The connection with Harrison was as good as it gets. I was in on Kyler Murray this year, and Sam getting him in the 7th round looks quite nice right now. Devon Achane. How about that? How about that performance Thursday night? In a week where it looked like he wasn't going to play. On a short week. Not only does he play, he gets 29 touches. I never thought he would have a game like that in his career. I thought, oh, this is a, 15 or so touch per game guy. 29 on a short week, injured. Clearly not too injured, but still battling an ankle issue. 29 touches. He's their offense now with Tua out. They're going to run that offense through him. Now, is that a good thing? It's a great thing, but the wheels probably are going to fall off at some point. And I don't know. I kind of feel like if I owned Achane, I'd almost rather 15 to 20 touches. Keep him let's try to keep him healthy. Let's keep him explosive too. Like we've seen in the past, someone like Tony Pollard. Pollard, when he was in that role in Dallas where he was getting 10 to 15 touches per game, insane efficiency. Then he needs to be a workhorse, and it was disappointing. So sometimes that's the case with these guys. Right now, what's really helping Achane, because, hey, his rushing efficiency is horrible right now, 3.8 a carry. That is way down from the 7 yards per carry he had last year, so whatever ridiculous number it was. What's carrying him right now is he's got 7 catches each of the first 2 weeks. I think there's a chance that continues because you're going to have a backup running back or a backup quarterback in. Checking down to the running back makes sense. As long as, I loved Achane coming in. I just hope he stays on the field. As long as he stays on the field, he's one of the best picks of this draft. But a big piece of me thinks that they can't be doing this 30 touches per game shit. There aren't many guys in the league who can survive that workload, and doing it with someone with a history of injury feels foolish. But Achane right now is the running back 3 on the year. Sam started Jeff Wilson. I didn't really understand starting both of those guys. I think his hope was probably that Jeff Wilson would score. And that made sense. You're hoping Achane gets his touches and then Wilson maybe ends up with 10 points because he gets into the end zone. If that was the thinking, I get it. It just hurts to have sat Devin Singletary, who scored 14. It wouldn't have made a difference in the main matchup, but it would have made a difference in the second matchup. Sam would have won that had he started Singletary. Tyreek Hill had a down week. I don't know how to feel about him now with Tua out. Thompson is bad. Just bluntly put, he's bad. But McDaniel, you figure that he's going to find a way to scheme it to Hill. And Hill's the type of guy who all it takes is one touch. I think Hill's going to be fine, but probably a hit to his ceiling. And that's a shame. That's a shame. But if you could look at it and say the Dolphins offense now is Achane and Hill, and they're just going to feed those guys. They're probably going to force it into their hands as much as they can. And so you just hope that volume, with efficiency likely to decrease for that offense as a whole, volume uh, will hopefully keep those guys in their elite status. Mike Evans had a down week. What can you do, right? It is what it is. It was a huge Chris Godwin week. And again, this is similar to the thing with Andrew. And I said this during the draft recap. I think it's hard for both of those guys to be on in the same week. They were in week 1. Here in week 2, they weren't. And so, I don't know. We'll see, like, how many times in the season you feel good about both of them. Maybe it's a little over 50% of the time, but I think there are going to be plenty of these weeks where one's good, one's not. I guess if they combine for like 25 to 30 like they did, you view that as fine, but that's good floor, it's not great ceiling. And then the big issue for me with what happened with Sam's team is Sam Laporta. I already talked about all the tight ends in the beginning. I don't like seeing this 3 targets from Laporta. Jared Goff threw the ball 55 times. Sam Laporta ended up with 3 targets. I don't know. Jameson Williams is a little bit too involved for my liking if I was a Sam Laporta owner. I think he'll be okay. Really, I think all of those tight ends who are struggling are going to end up being all right. Just don't know if they're going to end up being worth where they were drafted. Like, 4th round pick, Laporta's got to be pretty good. And that looked like a steal. He kind of slid in our draft, and that looked like a steal at the time. And now, I don't know. The targets worry me. I'm not worried about the lack of production so far because it's early season. That could be fluky. The 8 targets through 2 weeks, especially when Jameson Williams is getting as much as he is, that I don't like at all. That's got to turn around soon. How deep into this am I? This is going to end up being another 2 hours. I can't help myself. I just can't help myself. All right, it's time for my matchup. I defeat Dylan 112.08 to 100.36. Always satisfying when you beat Dylan. Matchup MVP. This was a weird week for me. Everybody except Chase and the Dallas defense. You look at this, the other 7 players on my team all scored between 13.5 and 19 points. I didn't have any 20-plus point performances. It was just a really solid effort from everybody except for 2. I guess if you had to pick an MVP, it would probably be Jordan Mason, just because he's given you 17 points when that's not someone coming into the season you would have been counting on. Second week in a row, I made the wrong call at quarterback. That's going to be an issue every week probably, because how do you differentiate between those 2 guys? They're very similar they're in a similar tier, and they're different styles. Daniels is going to do it with his legs. Burrow is going to do it with his arm. And I play matchup, right? I played the matchup here. Daniels, to his credit, ends up with 15.7 in a game where he didn't have a touchdown. That's impressive. 44 yards rushing, really efficient as a passer too. And you'll take nearly 16 points without a touchdown. Truly, that you can't ask for more. Jordan Mason already said he had a great game. He's their workhorse. The only issue with Mason, there's no pass catching there. He's got 2 catches through 2 weeks. That's not a thing for him. So I if he has a week where he doesn't score, you're gonna end up slightly disappointed. Touchdown dependent running back 1 who turns into a running back 2 when he doesn't score. That's pretty much what Mason is. Trey McBride recovered that fumble in the end zone. Comically enough, it was James Conner's fumble. So you think about it, if that had been recovered by the defense, I end up with 8 less points. I would have lost the second matchup. Actually, I would have lost the second matchup by .02 had McBride not recovered that fumble. So that's, hey, sometimes you get lucky. And God knows how many times we all get lucky and unlucky throughout the week. We're not seeing every play, but that was certainly one of those lucky moments. James Conner was great again. He's been just a volume horse. What's he got? 41 touches through 2 weeks. Said it with other guys. You just hope he stays on the field. He's going to be good as long as he does. 2 guys who will not be staying on the field are Isaiah Pacheco. Fuck me. I drafted Isaiah Pacheco over Achane for one reason. Because I felt he was safer when it came to injury. That's seriously, I was so torn between those two. And the tiebreaker was I trust Pacheco to stay on the field. Achane, I don't. Here we are, 2 weeks in, and Pacheco has suffered a pretty devastating injury. Going to miss minimum 6 weeks. The guy broke his ankle. He broke his lower leg, I guess would maybe be more accurate. Surgery required. I don't know that he is himself when he returns. The belief is he's going to be back in about 2 months, so that's nice. Like you're going to get him back at some point, but been reading some bad stuff about these injuries that even when you come back, it takes a long time for you to regain your previous explosiveness. It might not be until next season that he's fully himself. So I'm pretty worried about Pacheco. I don't know that he's going to be an elite contributor for me for the rest of the year, and that's a shame because he was looking pretty damn good. He was a workhorse, right? I had 3 workhorse running backs. Pacheco 24 touches in this game. Can't ask for more than that. So tough loss there. Deebo Samuel gets banged up too. He's going to miss a few weeks. So my team really deep. It was so deep that I had to sit. I didn't have to sit Nico Collins, but I had a decision basically between. I had 2 spots for, in my mind, Collins, Connor, and Chase. I sat the wrong one. That's been a trend for me so far this season. And but yeah, hey, I'm fortunate to have the depth that I do. Collins, of course, will be starting every week now. Brock Bowers probably will be starting a fair bit. Brock Bowers, who has been sensational. I have the top 2 of the top 3 tight ends right now, with the other one being Isaiah Likely, who we'll talk about later. And then the last guy on this team to talk about is Jamar Chase. Fuck him. Wide receiver 42. And this is what's amazing. My team's been pretty good, right? 3rd in scoring, 2nd in record if everybody played everybody each week. It's been pretty good. And I've done that without, essentially, I haven't had a first-round pick. Made brutal calls at quarterback. So I feel like there's much more for this team to offer if I can manage it right. And if Chase can get right, I still think Chase will. But this is infuriating, and this is his fault. This is entirely his fault. He's come in with some just horrible attitude. And I get it. You know what? He felt he deserved to be paid. And with all the injuries you see all over the league, I don't blame any player for wanting to get paid because they know the second that I suffer a devastating injury, the team is going to just throw me into the fucking gutter. So I don't blame them, but this is what happens. You get off to these slow starts. Jamar Chase has 11 targets through 2 weeks. That's ridiculous. T. Higgins isn't even out there. Mike Gesicki, I think, is leading this team in targets. What are we doing? So we'll see. Yeah, if I can get Chase, I need Chase to step up now with Samuel and Pacheco out. This is a get right week. Mentioned it with Zach Moss for Andrew. You got Washington and Carolina coming up. If you can't get it done against them, it's time to reevaluate where Jamar Chase is at. You want to be the highest paid receiver in the NFL, you got to start playing like it. Overall, very happy with where my team is at, but there are a couple of things got to get right. I got to get that quarterback situation right, and Jamar Chase has got to produce. As for Dylan, this was pretty rough when you think about it in the grand scheme of a season. This was a pretty big gag job, frankly. I mean, his team after the 4:30 slate was projected 118 points. I think that put him third on the week in scoring at the time. It's looking like fair chance at a 2-0 week. You feel like you got a 1-1 week in the bag, and you end up, hey, 0-2. And now 0-4 on the season. Horrible, horrible place to be. And it was all there. It was all there to have what would have been a massive 2-0 week without Nakua. But some guys really let him down. As for the players that didn't let him down, Devontae Adams, you love to see the volume. I said last week he needs volume to get the job done, and he got it. So that's good. That's good to see. 12 targets, and he ends up with a 1-yard touchdown too. So he had a big game. You just need those targets to keep coming. That's the big thing with Devontae. Can't be having those 6-target games like week 1. Zach Charbonnet, great job filling in. He wasn't a great real-life player as he had 14 carries for 38 yards, but he scored. He had 5 receptions. It's pretty good. Jonathan Taylor was fine. Very bad sign for him is that when they were trailing in the 4th, he didn't play. Jonathan Taylor actually did not take a single 4th quarter snap. Not one. It was entirely Trey Sermon and Tyler Goodson. And so I guess that means when the Colts are in like full pass mode, when they're down multiple scores in the 4th, Taylor's not going to play. That's bad. It's really bad. But he's going to have his moments, but that just caps your ceiling. It's what has always been the issue in fantasy for Nick Chubb, right? Like elite pure runner, but he was always held back by his lack of receiving game involvement. Taylor is a very similar guy. Rest of the team not good for Dylan. CJ Stroud again, like said it last week, pocket passer, right? You need 300 yards and or 3 touchdowns. Stroud played a really quality, real NFL game on Sunday night. 23 of 36, 260 and a score. Efficient. He wasn't perfect, but he was good. But he gets you 17 fantasy points. He's the quarterback 11 on the season right now. You need more touchdowns. You can't have 3 touchdowns through 2 weeks. Not as a pocket passer. And the Bears struggled. Swift and Moore were not good. Moore was frustrated. Caleb Williams couldn't get him the ball. DJ Moore, who I love as a player, Dylan does too. Wide receiver 40 on the season right now. And that's kind of painful to see. He's way too good for that. This is like the nonsense that went on in Carolina some years. Hopefully Caleb Williams gets it going. But man, I really thought DJ Moore was going to have a huge game, right? You're without Keenan Allen. Roma Dunze didn't do anything. So you'd think that Moore would have had a great night, but it was just simply that the Bears couldn't do anything offensively. Nice fill in, Luke Schoonmaker. That was a good move by Dylan, right? You lose Jake Ferguson, go with his backup. Dallas is going to throw their tight end, whoever it is. You got 6 targets, 7.3, nothing remarkable, but that was solid. There were people in our league who could have used that tight end production. I'm worried about Dylan's team. I said it last week. I just don't see it. Not without Nakua. Not without Nakua and with some of these other guys struggling. He's got to figure it out. You can't really start 0-6. That would probably be too deep of a ditch to put yourself in. Big week coming up against Sam. All right, we got one division left. Highest scoring team each of the first 2 weeks. Couldn't get off to a better start if you're Nothdurft. 138.63 to 89.53. The win over Lorran. Yeah, it's pretty impressive what Nothdurft's team has been able to produce. Obviously, the matchup MVP and weekly MVP is Alvin Kamara. 43 points. The guy scored 4 touchdowns. Kamara, he just has a tendency to do this seemingly once a year. He has one of these just monstrosity games. He might have more in the tank than I thought he did. He's averaging 5.7 per carry. That offense in general looks amazing. Way better than I thought they would. So, hey, Kamara, you knew the volume would be there. I just didn't think the efficiency would. But right now, it's both volume and efficiency, and that's why he's been pretty perfect. He's the running back 1 on the season. See if it keeps up. Rashee Rice, one of the best picks of the draft so far, 6th round. Obviously, he was going there because of those legal concerns. Nothdurft took advantage of it. And so far, you got a low-end wide receiver 1 that you picked up in the 6th. Now, not everything is sunshine and rainbows here. There are some issues. Some of the early round picks have been disappointing. Garrett Wilson, 2 single-digit weeks, wide receiver 37 on the year. It's not what you want to see. Hopefully he gets it going with Rodgers, but right now, it's just not there. Kyren Williams, I've said it before. I don't think Kyren Williams is that good. Like, I don't think he's a very good real-life running back. Crazy volume. That's what made him great last year. But the guy he's got 30 carries for 75 yards. 30 for 75. Now that line is bad. And so we'll give him some benefit of the doubt. But this is kind of how he's always been. These low yards per carry games. He finds his way into the end zone. He catches some passes, and so he ends up being good for fantasy. But so far, he's got 2 touchdowns, and he still is just the running back 19. Where would he be without those 2 touchdowns? He'd be in the trash. But now, yeah, I mean, you figure that volume's going to continue. I think he's still going to be good for fantasy. I do. Like I'm saying some negative things. I still think he will be good for fantasy this season. But he needs the volume because I don't think he's good enough without it. Jameson Williams on the bench, promising. Wide receiver 6 through 2 weeks, 20 targets through 2 weeks. That's where Sam Laporta's targets are going. Really a crazy shift there in Detroit. Not one that I saw coming at all. I had written Williams off. I thought he's just a gadgety kind of. He'll have 5 big plays a year because he's still a crazy athlete. But I didn't think he was going to develop into a real player. Here he is. This is the guy they drafted. This is what they wanted him to be. And he might be turning into it. Needs to show it for a few more weeks, but right now, that's looking like a great pick. Nothdurft got him in what, the 10th? 9th. So Nothdurft's team, yeah. I mean, it's been good. Lamar Jackson, could he be better? Sure, but he's the quarterback 4. And he doesn't have a rushing touchdown yet. He's only got 2 touchdowns on the season. He's the quarterback 4. So yeah, things are going well here. You just you need Williams to keep his volume, and you need Garrett Wilson to step it up. It's funny that it's those top 2 picks that are the most worrisome part of this team in the early going. Losing team is Lorran. Been a rough start. There's not much good going on. Travis Etienne, he hasn't been great. He's got 2 touchdowns. He's the running back 23. Very little yardage, right? He doesn't have over 60 total yards in either game so far. Touch is way down. He was a volume machine last year. So far this year, 14 touches, 16 touches. I don't know. I was in on ETN this year too, but early returns are pretty bad. Aaron Jones was not good this week. Some good, some bad from him early season. Drake London had that huge last possession and that game-winning touchdown to end up with a good showing. Kirk Cousins looked quite a bit better. I don't think he was amazing, but he looked way better than week 1, and so that's an encouraging sign. But you need London's targets up. He's only got 10 through 2 weeks. Kirk was spreading it around. He's involving Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod had a role in that offense on Monday night. We'll see what goes on there as the season progresses. I don't have I lean that London is not going to pay off for where he was drafted, 34th overall, but I don't feel super confident in that opinion. Kyle Pitts, why do we do this to ourselves every year? Why do we do this every year? He's got 7 targets through 2 weeks. It's it's getting close to time. It's getting close to be the time that we just say Kyle Pitts is not good. It's getting close. Like Drake London, I'm not there quite yet, but I'm very close. How many excuses are we going to come up with? At some point, this guy needs to do something. 46 yards through 2 weeks. Brandon Ayuk, it's been bad, but now, hey, here's the good news. Deebo Samuel is out. Ayuk should step up. Just like Jamar Chase, it's been horrible early on in the year after his holdout. You figure as the season goes on, Ayuk's going to get going. With Samuel out, that's going to necessitate Ayuk's usage. So better days should be coming for him. Tony Pollard's been a good pick. 7th round, running back 13. He's getting way more volume than I thought he would. He's got 41 touches through 2 weeks. That's really nice. Really nice. That was a great pick by Lorran. But A.J. Brown out. Jaden Reed kind of ruined, at least in the short term, by the Jordan Love injury. This team's in a bad place. 0-4. And things just not quite working out yet. I don't know. I think Lohan's in. I think he's in big trouble. Important week upcoming. That's all I can say. Last matchup to do. What a shit matchup this was. Horvath 90.53 defeats Krieger 85.11. The only reason it was notable is because it was neck and neck going into Monday night with Bijan facing Saquon Barkley. And it went back and forth quite a bit throughout that game. That part of the matchup was fun, but man, was this miserable. Matchup MVP for Horvath, we will give it to Zay Flowers, who had a huge game. 7 catches, 91 and a touchdown on 11 targets. It was a Zay Flowers game. Week 1, it was Isaiah Likely. Week 2 was Zay Flowers. Maybe it'll be Mark Andrews this upcoming week. Saquon was good. He did have that big drop to kind of cost the Eagles the game at the end there, but Saquon had another good showing. He's the running back 2 through these first 2 weeks of play. Jahmyr Gibbs, love his floor. 11 catches through 2 weeks. That provides such a safety net for Gibbs, and he's going to have big plays. I think he's going to be really good. Those 2 running backs, as long as they stay on the field, that should be a hell of a tandem. But outside of that, Mahomes, quarterback 12 on the season. He's doing what he did last year. He's not paying off. He's got 3 interceptions. I guess you think that they'll probably throw more now that Pacheco is out, but he needs to really get going, or that's going to be a horrible pick, just as it was last year. Again, like he doesn't run. So he has 32 yards rushing through 2 weeks. He doesn't really run in the regular season unless he absolutely has to. And so you need those big passing performances, and he hasn't had those in a couple of seasons. The whole league it doesn't have them. Defense has changed. They're taking away the deep passing game. And so offenses are more content to just run the ball, take stuff underneath. The Chiefs are still winning games. That's all they care about. They don't care how they win. Mahomes doesn't give a fuck how he wins. But that's not good for fantasy. Jalen Waddle, I think, is in big trouble. While I think Achane and Hill can survive the Skylar Thompson era, I don't think Waddle can. I think he's screwed. I'd be very worried about him. He hasn't been good to begin with this year. And now he's got 9 targets through 2 weeks, and now Tagovailoa's out. Tank Dell's been disappointing. I'm not giving up on Tank Dell for this season. I think he's too talented to not work out. They almost hit him on a deep passing play. Stroud just overshot him a little bit. Those looks are there, and they will eventually connect. But I guess the bad thing for Tank is that inconsistency is inevitable, right? Nico Collins is the one there. You have Stephon Diggs. As much as I just shit on him before, Diggs is still there. He's still going to command some targets. And so there are weeks where Tank Dell will be third, and really with Mixon in the fold too, fourth. And that's what we've seen so far this year. And you drafted him in the 5th round. Like, if you had drafted Tank Dell in the 8th round, right, you wouldn't care. You'd say, I'm fine with him being a boom or bust option. You drafted him in the 5th round. You need him to provide more of a floor than he is right now. I think he'll be way, way, way better than this. Is he going to return 5th round value? That I'm not positive of. Not much else to speak of on Horvath's team. Tight end is an issue right now. Tight end's a big issue for both of these teams. For Krieger, it really couldn't have gone worse, I don't think. You start Tua on Thursday. He suffers that head injury. You get less than 7 points. The wide receivers you started combined for 8.4. Krieger went heavy running back. Talked about it several times. He went all in on running back this year, 4 of his first 5 picks. And his running backs are very strong. It was his first 4 picks. I thought it was 4 of the first 5. It was his first 4. And yeah, I mean, he has incredible strength at that position, but the rest of the team sucks. So you're going to have to make a trade. Somebody out there is going to want a running back, but I don't know. Terry McLaurin, I'm out. I haven't liked him in a few years. I don't know what the deal is. But I'm done. I was done with him last year. I never would have drafted him this year, even with Jaden Daniels. He's got 39 yards through 2 weeks. He's a good player. He's going to have good games. But this is Terry McLaurin. This is what happens. He's like 70% of the time awful. And then he makes you forget that because he has a few big games a year. Xavier Worthy came crashing back down. He's got 6 touches through 2 games. I think that will begin to increase as he gets more familiar with the offense, and probably they're going to design some handoffs for him too. That would just make sense. So I think he'll be okay, but maybe a little bit frustrating. Ramondre Stevenson's been one of the great picks of the draft so far, 4th round, running back 9. He's back to what he was 2 years ago. He's the workhorse of that New England offense. They're running everything through him. Right now he's got 51 touches through 2 games. Josh Jacobs has been a tank. Just had a 32 carry game. He hasn't scored yet. That's what's kept him. He's the opposite of Kyron Williams and ETN. He hasn't scored, but he's been pretty good. Like, he's in the same area as them. He's running back 22 without a touchdown. Those touchdowns will come. Bijan looked good. Again, touchdowns haven't come yet. I think he's going to be great. I really think he's going to have a huge season. The Tyler Algier thing is annoying. You know, he's good enough that he warrants some work every week, but I still think Bijan's going to be pretty much what you hoped. Rachaad White, I'm worried about. He's a Kyron Williams to me. I don't think he's that good. He volumes his way to fantasy production. He's averaging 2 yards per carry right now, actually sub 2 per carry, 25 for 49. Good pass catcher, and that should help. But I don't know. Just hard to get inspired by those guys. Hey, White was great for fantasy last year. Maybe he'll find a way again, but I'd be worried. I'd be worried that the team eventually gets sick of the inefficiency. And then, you know, we can't get out of this without talking about Isaiah Likely. We just can't, because this went essentially like exactly as I expected. I said I wouldn't be surprised if he had one catch for 12 yards. He was sitting on 1 for 11 basically all day. He ends up 2 for 26, 3 targets. I don't know. Like, I can't be. There's no way I'm the only one surprised by this. I know other people out there thought the only one not surprised. I don't know if I said surprised or not surprised. I can't be the only one not surprised by this, and I know I'm not. There are other people out there who shared my beliefs on Likely within this league. There's just no way that he was suddenly going to become the guy overnight. And not in that offense, because really almost nobody has ever been the guy. Mark Andrews, that's it. In the Lamar Jackson era, that's pretty much it. That's the only pass catcher that's been any type of consistent. So, not surprised by this. Likely is good. He's going to have good games, but he's going to do this. And I think he's going to do this more often than not. And that 77 fab is going to age horribly. That was insane. I said last week I thought 20 to 25 was what it should have been. I figured that someone would bid up to like 35 to 40, and I'd look at that and say, you know, all right, that's an overpay, but you wanted to go out and get your guy. I can live with that. 77 was just unreal. I mean, that was pretty devastating because it did not solve this team's tight end issue, and now you basically can't do anything on waivers the rest of the year. So I think Krieger's going to have to still trade for a tight end at some point. I trust Krieger to find a way with this team. I think he's a really good manager. But if he does, it's going to be his best job yet because he's given himself not much to work with. Let's talk a little bit. I'm going to have a segment every week where I talk a little bit about the big fab players and almost like a fab headline, kind of like how I do a weekly headline. The fab headline to me is obviously those Chiefs running backs and what to do with that. Last week I was completely set on how I felt about Isaiah Likely. This week, I don't have much of a feeling on the situation. I don't feel strongly about it at all. I think if I had to pick up one player, it would be Steele. I think, and now that Kareem Hunt has signed, there are three options here. So you have Carson Steele, you have Samaje Perine, and you have Kareem Hunt. I view them all a little bit differently. I think Steele has the highest upside while also having like essentially a non-existent floor. I think Perine is the highest floor. I think Perine will be a pretty solid, like low end running back to high end flex. Like just a guy that you feel okay with. I'm going to put him in my lineup. He's going to get me 6 points. And if he gets into the end zone, it's going to be a good week. But he's going to catch some passes. Maybe he ends up with 40 to 50 total yards. And he's going to get me that 6 to 8 point floor. That's the way I feel about Perine. So if you're a really needy team, like I got to win now, I need a running back too, and I got to win now. To me, Perine is the option. Steele is more the option of I don't need a running back right now, or my team is in a good spot and I want to swing for the fences, because I think of the three, Steele is the only one who has a chance of being great for fantasy. I think there's a chance. Let's remember Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th-round pick. So the fact that Steele is an undrafted free agent, that doesn't mean anything to the Chiefs. And Steele runs hard similarly to the way that Pacheco does. So maybe Steele replaces Pacheco adequately. And then, he's the guy who's in there on running downs. He's the guy who's in there on goal line because he's a big back. I mean, he's listed as a fucking fullback. And you get touchdown equity in a good offense. Maybe Steele over the next 8 weeks, maybe he scores you 6 touchdowns. I think that's possible. But like I said, I also think it's possible that Steele sucks. Again, he's undrafted. He had some nice preseason highlights, but at the end of the day, we don't really know anything about him. It's possible he won't be good. He had a fumbling issue in college. He fumbled last week. If that continues, he will not play. They will eventually get sick of that. So it's possible he sucks and is just nothing. And that's the risk. I'll say right now, I have Pacheco, so in theory, I should be in on these guys. I'm not going hard for any of them because I just don't have a good feel of the situation. But yeah, I think for upside, Steele, and then Kareem Hunt is interesting simply because he knows the system and Reed probably trusts him. But the problem with Hunt is last year he was pretty awful. He averaged 3 yards per carry. He went unsigned. They opted to go with Perine over Hunt a couple of weeks ago. Like they signed Perine just before the season started. They could have signed Hunt if they really felt like he had anything left. They didn't. So thinking that they would now go with Hunt over Perine after they 2 weeks ago made the opposite decision, that doesn't make any logical sense. So to me, Hunt is the only case for him is that he's familiar with Andy Reid and Mahomes, and he knows their system, and that might gain him the trust of those guys. That's the case for Hunt. And Hunt was still good around the goal line last year. So if Steele fails, Hunt would be probably would be the goal line guy. This is why I'm not going in on any of these guys, because you could look at this in so many different ways. And ultimately, I'm going to let somebody else. I think we'll probably see those guys all. I think Steele and P. Ryan will probably go for somewhere around 20 each is my guess. I think Steele will go for more than P. Ryan. I'm going to let someone else do that. And if it doesn't, if it works out, I'll just accept that I didn't have a good read on the situation. But yeah, to me, P. Ryan is safe. He's a floor, and Steele is that's you're calling your shot. So we'll see. That's about as interesting of a situation as the Isaiah Likely one was to me. Again, I promised that this one would be shorter, and here we go. Every fucking week I'm just a sick human being, a sick man. Let's do the power rankings. Nothdurft, of course, stays at 1, and that's undisputed. And then there's a teardrop. Teardrop, interesting. TIER drop. I'm at 2. I move up from 4. Little worried about the 2 guys that I lost, but I think I have more than enough to sustain the quality that I've put up so far this season. So I'm sticking at 2. Sam is 3. He drops 1 spot. Andrew is the big jump this week from 11 to 4. So 3 teams from the same division ranked 2 through 4. And we are 3 of the 4 highest scoring teams in the early going. Or is it 3 of the top 5? Let me see. Someone needs to take a sledgehammer to my computer, and it may have to be me. We're 3 of the top 4 scoring teams in the league through 2 weeks. Horvath drops 2 spots to 5. It's been a good start to the season for Dave. And then Mecca jumps up 1 spot, going from 7 to 6. Peter goes from 10 to 7. And then it's Colin improving a slot, 9 to 8. Krieger drops down to 9. He had been 6th. And then the bottom 3, Larar drops 5 spots. He's the one who really sunk in the rankings this week after that 75-point performance and all the injuries he's dealing with. And then the bottom 2 they're in a class of their own right now. Lorran is 11, dropping there from 8, and Dylan remains in 12th. So those are the power rankings, and we move quickly into our week 3 matchups. Me versus Andrew, big matchup, really, really important one. First place in the division likely at stake. Sam could also end up in first place at the end of the week if he goes 2-0, and neither Andrew nor myself does. But yeah, potentially looking at first place in our division after this first set of divisional matchups. That on paper, it's probably the matchup of the week. And we'll see. We'll see who comes out on top. Sam versus Dylan. Sam going to be looking to kind of bury Dylan. I'm sure he'd be happy to do so. And Dylan, he's got quite a bit at stake. You need to come away with a win here. 0-2 would be pretty devastating. What a matchup between Krieger and Lorran. Feel like the team that loses this one is in disarray as well. Again, Lorran needs to, like Dylan, at least come away with 1 win this week. Krieger, if he were to lose this, I think he's in really, really bad shape too. So that's a key matchup. And then we got Nothdurft against Horvath. Can anyone slow down this early season start from Nothdurft? Horvath's team's been pretty good, and you're hoping for some more now out of Mahomes. That would be an opportunity for Horvath's team to establish itself as legitimate. We got our only 2-2 versus 2-2 matchup of the week with Larar and Peter. So that's kind of like a Saturday is moving day in golf. It's kind of like a moving day matchup in our league between Larar and Peter. And then we got Mecca Klingman, which I'm looking at the projections right now. Klingman's projected to win by 30, but Mecca, what does he not have a couple of guys in? He must still have Cup in his lineup. So, of course, that will change, but Klingman's got a shot at winning this matchup with the injuries that Mecca has going on. Mecca's he's without Cup, as we know. He's probably without Mostert, and even if Mostert plays, I don't know that you can start him. So we'll see. Mecca needs to figure it out at running back. That's the important part for him, and we'll see if he's able to do so. But yeah, that's gonna do it for our week 2 recap. Got the last week of the first set of divisional matchups upcoming, and hopefully next week I'll be joined by somebody. The only person who expressed interest this week was Mecca, but it's hard to make it work because he's 5 hours ahead, and it just right now it's hard for me to do it any time other than nighttime for me, which for him is like the middle of the night or very early morning. So it's hard to make that happen. But yeah, none of you other schmucks wanted to be on, but maybe next week somebody will. So hey, good luck to everybody out there. And let's see if we can get Dylan to 0-6 this week. That's what I'll be pulling for. Goodbye.